Chairman.
If you'll introduce yourselves and your guests for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, honored to be asked to be with you today. My career has been as a Washington lawyer, served in the government under both Republican and Democratic administrations, most recently in the Clinton administration as Director of Central Intelligence, and I'm now in venture capital and consulting with respect particularly to energy issues. I've been a member for some years of the North American Industrial Hemp Council because of my interest in basically prosperity for rural America and these overall issues. And I have a few points to make. Perhaps I ought to first ask Dave to introduce yourself, and Glenn.
Well, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I'm State Representative David Munson from northeastern North Dakota, and I've been working on the industrial hemp issues basically since 1997, and have passed lots of legislation in North Dakota. And I am a farmer. I'm a former school teacher, biology and chemistry. Former school administrator, principal, superintendent, and I am also on the board of directors for the North American Industrial Hemp Council.
Gail?
I'm Gail Glenn. I had a farm in Clark County, 300 acres. I raised early tobacco and had a cow-calf operation. And I was one of the people that Governor Burton Jones, appointed to his task force on industrial hemp and other fiber crops back in whenever it was, in the late 90s. So I've been interested in this for a long time because it would be a nice industrial crop that would help replace and be an alternative to tobacco, but also because I'm kind of a green person, and because industrial hemp is a very sustainable crop. It is raised with very little fertilizer. It is not necessary to use any herbicide or pesticide, which makes it a wonderful rotation crop for soybeans, corn, tobacco, wheat, anything else. And it's wonderful for the waterways because there's no chemical runoff from this crop. So it doesn't matter whether you plant it near the riverbank, near a swamp, wherever you plant it. There's no chemical destruction to the environment, water or earth. I'm very interested in this as a crop for farmers. They need a new industrial crop, and I think this is it.
I think first and foremost we need to focus on the jobs aspect and the prosperity aspect of potentially legalizing the growth of industrial hemp. Its uses are stunningly broad. About 35% of the new Mercedes Benzes are made out of hemp, for example, in Germany. And we will hear from Dave shortly on some of these aspects, as well as several other points that he would like to make. I want to say that the ease of distinguishing industrial hemp from marijuana is at the heart of this matter, and that we've been discussing today, and it is also at the heart of the matter whether, even if they could be distinguished from up close, whether it is plausible to plant marijuana, hide it essentially in industrial hemp fields. Now, in the first place, as Senator Parrott pointed out in his questioning about GPS, and the previous panel admitted this made a very substantial difference with respect to distinguishing hemp from marijuana, because if one sees any plant of this sort from aerial surveillance or otherwise, one can check with the system and see whether or not it has been, that farm, that location, that GPS location has been certified by the state government, let's say, as able to grow industrial hemp. This is a huge step in a completely different direction than was possible before GPS came in, and we all know what a difference it makes in being lost in a strange city and being able to punch in your objective of where you want to go. It has also revolutionized this issue. Now, it is also, I think, the case that it is very important that there are 35 industrial Western countries that permit the growing of hemp. We've taken a rather careful look at this in the North American Industrial Hemp Council. We cannot find one that has had a problem in distinguishing industrial hemp from marijuana. Canada, with our next door neighbor, with this policy now for a decade plus, doesn't have a problem distinguishing industrial hemp from marijuana. Now, if THC is value across the spectrum, so the question is, if you have under 0.3% THC in a cannabis plant, that is clearly to everybody industrial hemp and not marijuana. If you have 10% even THC, you've got, and up to 25 or 30%, of course, you've got marijuana. What about intermediate levels where you have 1% or 2%? It's a closed case, and there could be some ambiguity in deciding whether or not you need to do testing and need to obtain an opinion about what percent THC this is. But as a general proposition, hemp is planted very close together and grows very tall, like bamboo, doesn't look like a marijuana plant at all. And it's grown in part for the seeds that are up there and part of the system, whereas a marijuana plant is basically a small bush, and you don't want, if you are a marijuana smoker, the last thing you want in your marijuana is seeds. So the distinction between a hemp plant in appearance, generally speaking, and a marijuana plant is quite substantial. We had, for example, a statement from California, where medical marijuana growers are aiming for THC levels of 30% or higher. Many growers are up in arms over the possibility of hemp being grown in the San Joaquin Valley, said Sarah Soares, an advocate with the Coalition for Cannabis Policy Reform. They argue that pollen from industrial hemp will destroy their crops, she said. Even indoor growers go to great lengths to prevent pollen from sneaking in with HEPA filters and sticky mats at doorways. So the marijuana growers are about the last people who want industrial hemp. They complain a great deal about policies that let industrial hemp go forward. The question comes then of what about the farmer who's taking a chance? He's got a big hemp field. He's been certified by the state. It's okay for him to grow hemp, but he'd like a little bit of extra money, and so he sneaks off into a corner of his field and plants some marijuana surrounded by hemp. Would he do that? Well, most farmers I know are more honest than that, but even if he were a dishonest farmer, would he do that? Only really if he knows nothing about botany or he's high on marijuana. Those would be the two cases. Why? It is in fact the case, as the commissioner's co-witness said, that if you have a couple, let's say, one with high cholesterol, one with low cholesterol, there's a reasonable chance, it's a bell curve, that their children may have intermediate levels of cholesterol and down, and there's a small chance that they have high cholesterol like the father, a small chance they have low cholesterol like the mother. But generally speaking, what happens is this averaging. Gregor Mendel taught the world this 2 centuries ago. If there were equal amounts of marijuana and industrial hemp planted in my hypothetical farmer's field, then as time went on, you would probably end up having both of them somewhere in the middle. You'd have a bell curve kind of in the middle of the THC distribution. But if you have a tiny amount of marijuana trying to be hidden in a large hemp field, there's going to be so much more hemp pollen, industrial hemp pollen, than there is marijuana pollen, you are going to have that bell curve centered far more on the high temp